Delighted to be joined by John Barrow of Azure, Love Your Accountants, based here in the Southwest. The idea of this session is an interactive session. People can request to jump on the screen to ask questions to John, get involved in the debate around financials, what's the accountancy. Yeah, an interesting kind of profession in terms of, we've seen huge change in recent years, financial software, SaaS platforms, and yet through it all, I guess the financials of any business remain absolutely critical to sustain success. So this session really is a chance to sort of get out some of those questions, get it out in the open. We've got an expert here to help us. So it can be questions in the chat, or it can be click on the blue button to jump up on screen. We'll just experiment with this format to get some conversation going. So while people kind of deliberate on that and decide whether they fancy being up on screen, I'll start to put questions. I'm going to start with a question, John, to get this going. Okay, so one of the things that Azure Love Your Accountants have been doing to help Tech Southwest as a key partner in the Tech Southwest Startup Studio Accelerator Program, providing advice to 10 startup founders, tech companies across the region. I think it would be good to get reflection on that, really, in terms of what were the kind of things that were emerging there, the focus of those in terms of financials, whether it's obvious common sense things or a bit more strategic. It'd be good to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for one, I think it was a really good program to be a partner with, and I think obviously going into that, I think the perception of an accountant is this sort of dry person who provides you a sort of a set of accounts once a year, 9 months after your accounting year end, and that's the day before your tax deadline, and that's their sort of the value. And that wasn't what it was at all when I was doing the workshop with those guys. So it was much more sort of a conversation like this, sort of free form, speaking to them about it. And a lot of them, I suppose, because most of them were just starting, weren't they? A lot of people begin a business and it's sort of a passion about a skill they already have. And being a business owner is an incredibly tough thing. You've have to have so many responsibilities on different sections. And I think a lot of people start out being good and skilled at their passion, but then don't really form an actual strategic path how to get there. And that my role within that was sort of the financial side of, okay, yes, you may be building this product in this sector or whatever. Have you thought about, this potential sort of tax relief, or maybe talk about like the sort of the free ports in Plymouth and those sort of things now. And it's sort of like building that sort of structure within it. But they were very interesting to talk to, I thought, those guys. And by the end of it, when they did the pitch event, I thought they were all prepped really well. And I think quite a few of them did get investment, didn't they?
Well, that's the stage. There's 3 or 4 of them now are having this conversation. So I guess one thing is you assume that everyone has got it and has made the switch from kind of seeing accountancy and basic financials as a necessary evil to actually a more proactive and strategic approach. With a trusted partner, help you achieve drive your business, underpin your business plan, drive your activity towards your goals. What's the difference between a kind of steady state, basic use of bookkeepers, accountancy, whether that's a firm or software or a bit of both? What's the difference between that and having a strong financial strategy based on the numbers?
Well, I think the main thing to note is technology now has completely changed the way accountancy is. I'd be amazed if anyone has not, for their business, using cloud accounting and using like paper anymore. I'd be amazed if any accountancy firms are running like that. And just through the nature of elements like software like Xero and Receipt Bank, there's no reason why the average person can't do their own bookkeeping in a business if they want to. It's not particularly complicated for a small business. Basically, it's just putting numbers into columns, and that is relatively it. So the value that an accountant nowadays has to bring is much more through using their technical knowledge. We spend years becoming chartered. So I'm a chartered accountant, chartered tax advisor, and it's much more around using sort of I see my role now is much more in terms of interpreting the numbers. So you don't need me to do the bookkeeping. It's not a particularly valuable thing to do anymore. In the past it was, because I suppose the element was also, you're removing stress from the business owner for that. But it's much more now, let's talk about on a monthly basis, get your numbers and interpret that into a pathway from where you are now and where you want to go to in the future. So I think definitely the difference is technology has definitely changed the way we operate as professionals. I don't think you can get away with any more saying that bookkeeping or payroll is necessarily a valuable thing, really. Although obviously they are important, very important.
Yeah. One of the things I often think about in terms of running SD Media and just this whole area in terms of is how far ahead you can look and get, and in terms of forecasts and budgets, especially considering the last 2 years and the shifts and the changes. Is there kind of this is a good approach, or actually it's about being agile and it's different for different types of companies?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like forecast, I see forecasting as really for, especially for small business, it's just as a motivational thing, really. I mean, you can make a forecast and budget based on whatever you want, but it's a very good way of strategically aligning your business. So for like Astley Media, when you're sort of planning out the rest of the year, if you can build out a financial forecast and how it affects the company, or like you've got sales leads of whoever, and then you can share that with the rest of your team, it sort of aligns everyone on a cultural value, and really the people behind the business are going to make that work. So I see that as more of a tool there, really.
And what about especially sort of the tech startups and as they grow in terms of the structured companies and that board and non-executive directors and that side, having the right people there? Can you ever be too early around some of that? And I guess people will have experiences of things that work well and things that probably haven't worked so well in terms of how you do that. But
well, I think, again, the key with that, I think, is that you have to have, if you're going to have an advisor, whether a non-exec or sort of a finance director or whatever, it's got to be someone that you trust. And I think that's really where it's built on. There's no point in having someone on your team that you're not going to actually listen to properly. And so if you've got a very good sort of a financial advisor with you currently, and you trust what they say, and they're reliable, that's an invaluable thing, I think, for a business owner to have.
And what about another thing that I'm very mindful, your kind of your business plan. There'll be people in this session who probably, yes, we have a business plan. We kind of don't refer to it every day, obviously, but it's there. We've worked through that process. Others perhaps, less, because again, there's so much change. We know our kind of overall objectives, but we haven't kind of created that sort of formal document of a business plan where you have to go through a process, including, of course, financials. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, again, I think if you haven't got a business plan, I mean, I would question that person why they even really set up the business in the first place, because how on earth can you really go through your day-to-day without knowing what you're trying to achieve? So just from a basic standpoint, I think everyone should be forecasting at least for sort of the year and having some basic goals around that. I think the biggest problem you have with businesses is it tends to be sort of employees within it, and especially for small businesses, because generally the owner is the one who's the skilled one, and they've set up a company because they're skilled at their job, but they're not very good at managing the people in the firm who are actually going to be delivering the product eventually. The worst thing you can give any employee is not a very clear expectation of what they need to be doing, and a business plan is a very easy way to do that. If at a high level the owner has created a business plan and said, you've onboarded a new employee and gone, look, this is where we want to be in a year's time, it's a great way to even run an interview.
And I guess that starts to link into culture, because a lot of organizations think about what they do and don't share with their companies. Tech sector, we like to think we have strong cultures, we like to think we're forward thinking, but actually sometimes there can still be a disconnect between these are your goals, this is your work, but do we really explain it, whether it's top level, a bit more detail about the financials, how we're doing? And I guess it's a mixed picture, but what your sort of reflections on that? And I suppose each organisation has to work out for themselves, but actually that can be a real motivator, can't it?
Absolutely. Well, I think the thing you're doing there is, well, one, if you give an employee in your team, for one, it shows you trust them, you're empowering them with the numbers, and also you're giving them responsibility over perhaps decisions day to day. And one, I suppose that's an investment from the owner, really, in terms of time, because if you end up getting a good bunch of staff who know all the numbers and how things interact, I think, sorry, I can't remember, it's Ollie, isn't it? I was just watching him in the sales chat, and he was talking about having sort of the team all be involved with sales. Like for our accountancy firm, I see all of the accountants in our firm all as sales people. If I give them the numbers and they are very conscious of what they do on a day-to-day basis, because a very service-based business, if they are pitching really every day to a customer in essence. And so I don't without I don't think it would be fair to me running my company if I didn't give them the information about the business, because I don't think they'll be able to do their job properly.
And there's sort of information sharing, and then there's sort of how you align it in terms of strategic goals, sort of departmental goals, down to teams and individuals. Because, you know, one thing I've learned in terms of different businesses is, you know, some people, they can be disconnected. Well, our job is to do this. So how does that relate to kind of, you know, especially, you know, sales and business development, you know, and you know, and actually financially, you can use that to kind of help explain that in terms of.
I think it's important for, if you know, for any size business, even extremely large ones. I think everyone in that company needs to be aware of what the overarching goal is. You know, like Disney is a really good example, actually, because Walt Disney is dead, obviously, but his business plan when he first set out was just to make people happy. And you know, that culture of a Disney movie coming out every year and sort of making everyone happy, like that is obviously gone way, but that's his legacy, really. Like, so I think it's very, I do think it's important to have some sort of a cultural aligning goal for everyone to be involved with. Yeah,
and then it's how you translate that. It's a driving force, and we hear more and more about purpose-led brands, you know, and of course that's always been there, and now I suppose the financial piece around that is, you know, cash flow, income, costs, all of that. You know, they are absolutely key to be across that if you're going to achieve that purpose, and it's how you align it to it, because you know, rather than keeping it as a separate.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, it's a key part of making any strategic decision. You know, finances, unfortunately, are just a part of everything that happens in business, regardless of what industry or.
With your clients, do you see, in terms of those tech clients, any particular things that, you know, that differentiate from other sectors in terms of embracing technology, the speed of which they need kind of things and reporting, things like that, or is it not really to do with the size of the company?
Yeah, well, I think the most interesting thing in terms of tech companies in particular is obviously the world of R&D tax. So traditionally, everyone has thought that as a business owner, the best way to be paid is through salaries and dividends, which is still, you know, a very tax efficient way of doing things. But now with research and development tax relief, you know, much more business owners are paying themselves higher salaries and then obviously claiming that back through R&D tax based on the work they're doing. So it's, I think that's the biggest sort of cultural shift I've seen in tech companies.
You're right. And on that, in terms of grants and funding, you know, that landscape is changing a lot as well in terms of sort of the leveling up agenda and the interest in the Southwest, which is fantastic in terms of investment funds, diluted funding, non-diluted funding. Are you seeing that, and how is that kind of playing out?
Yeah, well, I think you know, I mean, it's one of the good things that have come out of the pandemic. Like this, for example, wouldn't have happened really without COVID, would it? And I think what it has clearly done is enabled anyone from any location to be able to quickly hop on a call and chat with anyone, and that's obviously given up. Like, so you know, you were saying, weren't you, before to me that like Dartmouth is becoming quite a bit of a investment.
Yeah, it's amazing the networks and things that we're connecting to and finding out about the investors and people who are in the Southwest, you know, sort of second, third, fourth careers, sort of, you know, and it does seem easier to connect to these different parts of the ecosystem in terms of the companies, the support services, the investor community, and you know, it's not one community. That's the reality of it. It's very disparate and mixed, but actually, does feel like that is drawing together, and we are able to connect more easily and run things like, you know, like the startup studio. In terms of, you know, 2 years ago, that proved harder to get people on board with a virtual accelerator program. We can have companies in Cornwall alongside companies in Exeter, alongside companies in Bristol and Bath, etc. So that is a journey we're all on, isn't it? And I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of removes that. I think what's been really nice to come out of it as well, that perception of the culture where if you're not in the office, you're not doing any work. And I think, well, my experience of speaking with business owners is that their employees do not, you know, everyone's working, continuing the same, even harder at home sometimes, because I suppose you have that natural guilt feeling that if you're not at your desk, blaming you. But you know, I think it's a, you know, as things sort of level off and you have sort of like this sort of pattern. I imagine most people sort of do 2 days in the office and then sort of 3 days at home, and that can only improve the culture in a company, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that plays out, and I think what's not exciting about the Southwest this is going off topic a bit, there's that mix in terms of it's a great place to live and work. You can build amazing tech companies here if you have the digital infrastructure, but also, the talent and the skills, but also companies like to cluster together as well. So the science parks, the tech hubs, Exeter Science Park, Plymouth Science Park, Bristol, Falmouth, Launchpad, Future Space, all those actually kind of sort of developing their offerings as well for that blended approach. And so it's sort of, people want to gather because they want to be alongside the people who know about R&D, who know the researchers and relationships with the universities and the researchers and all that side of things as well. So just being in that mix of entrepreneurs and things, but it's a mix, we can do things like this and we can do those physical kind of things over time as well. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, in terms of, how we find talent, how we source talent, how we grow, the cultures we develop with a sort of blended approach in terms of, some people are very excited about being able to get back together and start meeting and working together, and that's already happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to know actually, so obviously you've got the second sort of a startup studio coming up, haven't you? Yeah, I don't know, but how have you found? Because you already said that you found already some companies that are already interested. Like how are you going about and finding these companies?
Well, it's through networks, isn't it? Tech Southwest has been around for 5 years now, and the principal aim was just join the dots, which was harder then because there's lots going on at local level, lots of face-to-face, and people weren't so sort of, looking above the parapet a bit more at a regional level. And then when, it grew, and things like the Tech Southwest Awards and other things. I'm going completely off topic now, but what's happened with the pandemic is that, geography, there's a big question mark about geography. Does it matter? And I would say, yes, it does matter, but it's shifting. Barriers have dropped, but in different ways. So we know many more people in the Southwest who were getting those trains up to London, public sector and private sector, who have now suddenly started engaging and have started joining Tech Southwest events and other things and guest speakers and others, because they're working down here. They want that sense of, we're part of something, we're part of a community, part of the tech community, which means different things for different people, of course, into the way you sit. But actually, they're looking around and saying, okay, well, so what is the Science Park doing? What is Tech Southwest doing? What is Digital Plymouth doing? What is Software Cornwall, etc., etc. So that is really really encouraging, because on this event, we stick and focus on the Southwest, but we could do other things. We could, in terms of how you kind of start to connect with other parts of the UK and elsewhere. So I think all of that is in the mix now. Of course, there's challenges as well in terms of, I think, in terms of talent, in terms of people might be looking beyond the region. There's advantages that you can look further afield, but if you can't find the talent locally or not willing to invest and build the relationships with the colleges, universities, and all of that, that's going to create change, and all that is playing out, as we speak. I say, we have, diving back into R&D. We have a question from Jenna. Would you say that R&D activity has reduced since COVID?
Has reduced?
Yeah.
No, I would say completely opposite. I would say, if any, COVID. Well, I mean, what COVID did is forced pretty much all industries to adapt, and through adaptation, you have innovation, which is the basic eligibility criteria for R&D. So, I would have said it. I'd be very surprised if any sort of firm doing any R&D tax would have had less interest.
And the other question is, do we do enough in terms of the Southwest? In terms of, I think traditionally we don't have so many companies applying for as many kind of, in terms of grants and funding, as perhaps some other parts of the country. So there's an education piece or a confidence piece, or we don't have the types of companies suitable.
Yeah, so I mean R&D in itself is so obviously I'm conscious we've got 2 minutes left, but
yes. 90 seconds.
Yeah, well, I mean, R&D is a particularly tough one because it's quite a vague area. So I see, obviously I'm on HMRC's committee for it as well. So we do quite a lot of the reform, and there's always bugbears with everything. So like improving a process, no one really knows what that means. So you have to go into very much detail, and you have to go into the sort of the BES guidelines, obviously in the background, and sort of then it's all to be honest, with those sort of elements, it's really just sort of an argument and preparing a case, and business owners don't have time to write the technical narrative, which is what you need for the R&D. So
definitely worth it.
That's a massive, quick 90 seconds sort of summation.
Yeah. No, thank you, John. I appreciate that. No, it's a whistle stop. We're on. We're at half time already. 30 seconds before we pick the live panel discussion. So thank you, John. Azure, love your accountants. Put your information in the chat so people can connect in the session or in the event chat. Thank you so much. We're now